The call came on a gray Thursday morning. A trembling voice said, "Mrs. Hill, you don't know me, but I was your son's roommate. You deserve to know the truth." I remember freezing right there in the kitchen, my hand still clutching the coffee pot. The sound of rain against the window suddenly felt louder than anything else. That call changed everything I thought I knew about my son, about his life, and about the kind of mother I believed I was. Ethan was my miracle child. After years of infertility, he arrived, fragile, quiet, with eyes that always seemed to notice more than he should. When he got accepted into Brierstone University, one of the most prestigious colleges in the country, I cried for 3 days straight. It wasn't just pride, it was relief. It was every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every missed vacation, all suddenly worth it. He was the first in our family to ever make it that far. I used to say, he's going to make our name mean something someday. The day we dropped him off, I remember standing by his dorm, trying to memorize everything. The scent of the hallways, the laughter of students, the posters plastered on the walls. He hugged me and said, "Mom, I'll make you proud." And for the next 2 years, he did. Or at least, that's what I thought. Ethan called every Sunday. He told me about his classes, his professors, his new friends. He sent pictures, smiling with his classmates, wearing the university hoodie, attending football games. He talked about group projects, late-night study sessions, and how he was struggling but pushing through. I sent him money every month, more than I could afford. When I hesitated, he'd reassure me that it was for books, meals, or transportation. I believed every word, because that's what mothers do. We trust, even when something inside us whispers that something feels off. The first whisper came in Thanksgiving of his second year. He said he couldn't come home because he had a major presentation. I tried to hide my disappointment, telling him I understood. But I spent that holiday staring at his empty chair. He promised to make it up to me at Christmas. But Christmas came, and he didn't. In January, the university sent a letter about tuition reassessment. It mentioned something about non-enrollment in the spring semester. I thought it was a clerical mistake. I called Ethan immediately. He didn't pick up. Hours later, he texted saying he'd handle it. His tone was oddly distant, rushed. Then, silence. Weeks passed. His calls became shorter. Sometimes he wouldn't answer at all. When he did, his voice carried a tension I couldn't name. He'd always have an excuse: bad signal, study load, depression, exhaustion. A mother's instinct never sleeps, but I pushed it down, convincing myself that he was just overwhelmed. Until that morning.
The man on the other end said his name was Caleb. He introduced himself softly, almost apologetically. "I was Ethan's roommate last year," he said. "I don't want to overstep, ma'am, but I think you should know what's going on." I felt my knees weaken. He told me Ethan hadn't been at Brierstone for months, that he dropped out in his sophomore year, that he was living off campus, working part-time jobs, and lying to everyone, including me. He said Ethan used to stare at his phone for hours, typing messages he never sent, that he seemed terrified of disappointing me. Caleb said, "He wasn't a bad person, Mrs. Hill. He just couldn't live up to the version of himself you believed in." Those words hit me harder than anything, because I realized maybe I hadn't been listening to my son. Maybe I'd been listening to the version of him I wanted to hear. I tried to call Ethan dozens of times. No answer. I even called the university. They confirmed what Caleb said. Ethan had officially withdrawn 6 months ago. His campus ID was inactive, his records marked voluntary leave. I drove 4 hours to Briarstone that same day. The campus looked different this time, colder, emptier. The dorm room where he once stayed had another name on the door. The cafeteria cashier remembered him, said he used to come in early mornings, sit alone, drink coffee, and leave before anyone else arrived. I left my number with anyone who might have seen him. Then, a week later, I got another call from Caleb again. He said Ethan was in the city, working at a small diner. I drove there immediately. The place was small, quiet, tucked between an auto shop and a laundromat. When I walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. My son, my brilliant, confident Ethan, looked thin, tired, older than his years. His hands shook slightly as he wiped the counter. He froze when he saw me. There were no words, just a silence heavy enough to crush both of us. He finally whispered, "I was going to tell you." But I didn't need him to. I already saw the truth in his eyes. He'd been lying for months, building a world made of stories, pretending everything was fine while everything was falling apart. He told me he couldn't keep up with the pressure, that he'd failed 2 courses, lost his scholarship, and didn't know how to tell me. So he lied. He sent fake photos from old campus events, used friends' pictures, and told me what I wanted to hear. He said, "You looked so happy when I talked about college, Mom. I couldn't take that away from you." I wanted to be angry. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to ask how he could deceive me like that. But when I looked at him, pale, trembling, broken, all I saw was fear. He wasn't the liar I imagined. He was a boy drowning under the weight of expectations, my expectations. We sat there for hours, saying almost nothing. He said he'd been saving money to reapply next year once he fixed things. He didn't want to come home until he could bring good news. That night, I took him home anyway. I cooked his favorite meal. I told him we'd start over. No pressure, no lies, just honesty. For the first time in months, I slept peacefully.
The next morning, I woke up to silence. His bed was empty. His phone was gone. He'd left a note on the table. It said, "I'll make things right, Mom. I promise. I just need time." Weeks passed. No calls, no messages. His friends hadn't seen him. His workplace said he'd quit. I filed a missing person report, but the police said adults often, quote, choose to disappear. Months blurred into seasons. I left his room untouched. Books, posters, everything. Sometimes I'd catch myself listening for the sound of his key in the door. Until another call came from Caleb again. He sounded different this time. Quiet, shaken. He said, "Mrs. Hill, you should sit down." They found him 2 towns over. He'd been living out of a small storage unit. A mattress, a few clothes, notebooks filled with job applications, and a half-written letter addressed to me. The letter said, "I'm sorry for the lies. I wanted to be someone you could be proud of. But every time I failed, it felt like I failed you too." He'd been gone for weeks before they found him. They said it was exhaustion, dehydration, a system collapse. Years of untreated stress and anxiety catching up at once. But deep down, I knew. It wasn't just exhaustion. It was the weight of pretending. The burden of perfection. The silent war between truth and expectation. The aftermath. I sat in his old room for hours after the funeral. His hoodie still hung on the chair. His acceptance letter was still pinned to the wall, yellowed, curling at the edges.
I replayed every call, every message, every time I said, "I'm proud of you," without ever asking, "Are you okay?" I realized the hardest part of being a parent isn't losing your child. It's realizing they were lost long before you noticed. Now, every time I see a college brochure or hear someone brag about their kid's success, I think about Ethan, about how easily pride can turn into pressure, and about how sometimes love can suffocate when it forgets to listen. The moral reflection, ending voiceover. If you're listening to this, maybe you're a parent, maybe you're a son, and maybe you've told a lie. Not out of malice, but out of fear of disappointing someone who loves you. I wish I could tell my son one last thing. He never had to be perfect. He just had to be mine. So tell me, would you rather know a painful truth from someone you love, or live with a beautiful lie forever? Let me know in the comments. And if this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe, because somewhere out there, another parent might need to hear that perfection isn't love. Listening is.